All right, now we're joined by Sheley Secrest, who's running for City Council position 8. So go ahead with a 2-minute introduction.
Sure. My name is Sheley Secrest. Many of you know me from living and working in Seattle over the years. Recently, I've dipped my toes into politics, and I'm learning a lot about what it actually takes to be a real candidate, because there's rules, some written, some unwritten. But I'm applying that wisdom, and I'm hiring a team of experts who literally could probably write their own handbook, and it's a pleasure to stand before you as a candidate for Seattle City Council. Now, the Sheley you may know is the valedictorian for undergrad, the fellow for the Washington State Bar Association, the law clerk for the United States District Court. The Sheley you may know is the leader of the NAACP, the activist with the fist and the big afro talking about block the bunker and no new youth jail. The Sheley you may know is the policy analyst for Alliance for a Just Society and the Urban League. The Facebook queen who posts probably way too many pictures of her kids and her grandbaby. But the Sheley that you may not know is how. How did I become the mother, the activist, the attorney? And honestly, that's through my community. My community made sure that I didn't fall through the cracks. My community supports my business. My community makes sure that we are finding a grassroots solution to race and economic inequality. That's why I'm running. I'm concerned, like many of you, about the Great Divide. Most of the decisions are being made by the top percent under this trickle-down theory that a rising ship will lift all sails. But we know that's not happening if you're aboard the Titanic. So I'm here asking us to bring a tent, bring a life jacket, bring a life jacket to the woman in the tent who doesn't have a drug problem, she doesn't have an addiction, she just doesn't have opportunity. Bring a tent to the little boy inside the classroom, right, who doesn't feel that we are providing his resources to have a living wage job. We've got work to do. I'm an activist, and that's what I want to bring to City Council. I need your support to do it.
Great, thank you. So now we have 4 prepared questions, and they're right in front of you if you want to turn the sheet over and read along as we read aloud. David, will you start with number 1?
I'd be delighted. What is your strategy for implementing, leveraging, and perhaps improving the incentive zoning program to create diverse neighborhoods and assure affordable housing?
Sure. I currently serve as the Economic Development Chair for the Seattle King County NAACP. Currently, we are working on gentrification in the central area. The idea is that what we apply there, we'd be able to use to fight displacement that's happening throughout all 4 corners of Seattle. So right now I'm working on 2 main committees, Black Community Impact Alliance as well as the Central Area Collaborative. What we're doing for the Central Area Collaborative is we're using the incentives of zoning to be able to provide organizations with the MFTE incentive, right? That's a tax exempt incentive if your units are 25% and less. Right now we've got 6 properties, 3 from First AME, 1 from the Catholic Community Services, and 2 from Africatown, Liberty Bank, and a fire station. Those are all community-based programs that are taking part in the Hall of Recommendations of the MFTE. That's an incentive. One of the things that I'm worried about is economic segregation. We all understand that the current grand bargain allowed developers the option. Either you pay a fee or you provide a certain percentage of affordable housing. NAACP, my role is making sure that we're not entering an economic segregation. We're not pushing folks into one side of the road where it's low income only. So I'd like to hear more about how we're going to apply that grand bargain. Another thing that I'd like to see us as far as incentives is increase the capacity. Right now, Office of Housing only has about 90 units that are taking part of the MFTE. We know that there's more organizations who are doing great things. So I'd like to see us up that some more and increase that capacity.
Okay. Elizabeth, number 2.
In your view, what is the city's role in assuring equal educational and achievement opportunity in the Seattle public schools?
As an attorney, I work on closing the school to prison pipeline. I have served on the governor's board for education reform. I was one of the organizers for closing the African American achievement gap. In that, my focus was making sure that we did better with the disproportionality that's happening inside of school expulsions as well as special education referrals. We passed education reform, but we're not quite seeing it inside of the public schools. There's still a huge disproportionate impact. Another thing that I'm working on is making sure that community-based organizations have an opportunity to reach the children before they are failing inside of their classrooms. We are working on the No New Youth Jail, where Michael Bryan was able to give $600,000 to community-led efforts that were going towards public schools and prevention. This way they're staying out of the jail system. Another thing that I wanted to make sure is that NAACP has passed the resolution that's been implemented actually, and making sure the curriculum itself is equity. And so we're enforcing that and implementing that. We're very pleased that Seattle School District has built-in curriculum that shows a more accurate reflection of the students that they're teaching. Another role that I think as City Council I'd be able to play is I like the mayor's Our Best First initiative, where he's actually partnering with community-based organizations who are taking a role with the students themselves, partnering with education. I also think that Tim Burgess has done a lot with his pre-K. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for City Council to not just depend on McCleary decision being funded. We always have to make sure that it's all hands in, and at the local level, we gotta get inside the fight to make sure we're saving our babies.
Brittany, number 3.
What are your specific recommendations for completion and follow-up steps of the Seattle Police Department consent decree and ongoing steps to improve department relations with Seattle's residents?
We're meeting with Mike Diaz next week on this. I think they're pulling the consent decree, we being the NAACP. So my role as NAACP, I was past police accountability chair. I was responsible for collecting all of the stories when there was a study saying that Washington does not have biased policing. Those of us in the African American community, Latino community, were like, what? Where are you guys living? So we collected all of the stories and we filed them. I served 4 years for the Office of Professional Accountability Review Board, where I was trying to work with the police department to correct themselves. That got absolutely nowhere. And so we brought in the consent decree folks. But to be honest, since 2012, 5 years looking back, I think that we need a moral decree, not a consent decree. It's more than just passing a law and doing the reform. We actually have to get to the heart of how can we find good officers who aren't fearful of when they see someone with a big afro and a wide nose, right? And I think that's something more of the heart that we need to be able to do. You can't train that. So working with the chief of police, working with the Community Police Commission, and I've got the endorsement of Lucy Dugard, Minty Longer, CPC, working on what that actually looks like, working on making sure that the CPC, the monitor, isn't reliant on the budget. Pierce Murphy recently made the recommendation of terminating Officer Whitlatch. That's the officer for the golf club incident, where she said, you swung a golf club at me. And then we saw that from the video, that doesn't happen. He made the recommendation for termination, and then he has to now reapply for his job. We don't want anyone in that position of power having to worry about, am I going to be employed in the future? So we're making sure that financially they don't have, it can be more independent. So I'm supporting that as well. So you'll know next week about the consent decree. I think they're going to pull it.
And Clayton, number 4.
What is your strategy for dealing with homelessness in Seattle?
I don't believe, I was on the Carlson show last month, and he was saying, they're all drug addicted. And I was like, no, really, they're not. I don't believe in blaming the homeless. I think that we need to increase services for wraparound services. I like what they're doing in the Soto district for the new shelter that's 24 hours, that actually gives services, showers, and how do you get out of it, how do you provide stability. I think that's a step in the right direction. I like the way that they did it. I like the fact that they repurposed an old building, using what you have, understanding the urgency of now. Let's take action to provide the services for our homeless neighbors. I don't like the sweeps. I was surprised when the mayor had said he was against the sweeps. I hope that he was serious with that. I think that there's violation of notice requirements. We know the homeless are losing too many of their items. It just further makes them unstable and isolated. So those are two of the things. I also like the fact that Shama Sawant has secured the funding, but understanding that they're not getting the services that the city has already promised them. So being able to bridge that disconnect. Funding was given and they're not getting funding for the honey bucket removal and garbage collection, those types of things. I would like to see just those basics, someone enforcing the existing budget things. I think the churches are doing a wonderful job. Churches have partnered with hosting some of the tent cities on their property. I think they're doing good, giving them more of an opportunity and giving them the services that they need to continue their partnership with taking on that role. They're rotating pretty much the homeless encampments. Those are just some of the many ideas that I have.
Thank you.
Great. So now we'll open up to follow-up questions. These are 1-minute answers. And we'll start with whoever is the first to
So
raise.
hard to
And
be
we'll start with
concise.
Clayton and then David. So Clayton, go ahead.
I was interested in your remark about training of and retraining of police, in that you said that it was a question of the heart rather than training. I wonder, as a prospective policymaker, I wonder whether that is really a positive perspective to begin with. Or, alternately, if it is a positive perspective, then are we not dealing with a demilitarization of the police force?
Yes.
Which is a subject for retraining.
Right. My focus is shifting away now, mind you. I'm also the attorney for the inquest of Shay Taylor. Shay Taylor was the most recent shooting death of the North Police Precinct. And so my understanding of where I'd like to see, you can't train someone not to be fearful. If someone in the second, when they're standing in front of a black man, has fear that, oh my gosh, he's going to take my life, that you have to do way before you give them the gun and the badge. You've got to be able to do the implicit bias, you've got to do the training ahead of time to be able to identify that as part of the application itself. So it's shifting it from the way that we train. I think Sheriff Sue Rohr is doing a wonderful job of training, but it's got to shift from how do you get to weeding out the folks who have that fear and focusing more on that. And that's going a lot further. NAACP, we're part of the governor task force on the use of deadly force. And so we made a lot of recommendations on how you can actually tap into identifying if someone has a fear that you can't train out.
Great. David?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, I'm just wondering, this is our first campaign cycle with democracy vouchers.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether you're participating in that program, whether you're now one of the candidates who's qualified. What's your thing with the vouchers?
I think it's wonderful. So even before I became a candidate, I was for the democracy vouchers. Because the truth is, activists like myself, normally we wouldn't even get a chance to be able to run for office without them. Some of the stances that we take isn't appealing to big business corporations when you're standing up there saying, tax the rich. They don't like that. And so democracy vouchers allows you to actually connect with the communities that you've been organizing for so long. So when we passed it, it was wonderful. When I said that I'm running and I was able to use them, it's been amazing. I'm still working on my qualifications. I think I've got like 50 more to go. But the vouchers are coming in and the excitement of people being able to say, I put you in office, and if you don't do as I say, I can take you out. I mean, that's who, as a candidate, you want to be beholden to. It's the people who put you there. So I think it's a great step in the right direction. So yes, I'm accepting vouchers.
Great. Sarah?
I wanted to know your position on impact fees on new development. Are you in favor of them, and if not, do you think there should be additional burdens placed on
discussion needs to go further on, yes, I'm for impact fees. I think we need to have engaged communities a little further to see exactly what that amount would be, what it would look like. I don't believe the folks who are at the table, and the reason why I say that is trying to find that sweet spot is what we call it. If you've got someone from a marginalized community who's been saying, develop here, we want growth, we want this here. Take the central area, for instance. Go down on Yesler, there's abandoned buildings that no one's touched, right? That folks have been saying, it's blight, do something, bring your money here, we've got it, and no one wanted to come. I would hate for us to say, to do something without knowing that story first, by bringing in a percentage that where a developer would say, I'm not going up to Yesler. And so, yes, impact fees, they're very good. I think we've got to go a long way of bringing more people to the table who actually are working, communities that are working on this issue to find exactly what that percentage would be.
Ben?
What is the first thing you're going to do when you're in office? What's your first priority if you're elected?
I like the police reform, since that's the biggest issue right now, with the consent decree about to be removed. All eyes are, well, what are we going to do now? Last month, they had adopted the recommendations from the Community Police Commission, but they left open to places, one, how independent it's going to be, so what I touched on before, as well as who is going to be the Community Police Commission. If you guys recall, there was a time when, under negotiation, the community was going to be ex-officers. Say that again, the community was going to be ex-officers. That is nothing of what we wanted when we were asking for the consent decree. So making sure that those types of revisions are actually worked out and synced up. Also, I know body cams is huge right now. What that looks like, community members want to make sure, yes, we want an extra eye so we don't have to just take the word for it. We want to see for ourselves, but how can we make sure that we're not under surveillance? And so being able to follow that through is also an area.
We got time for a couple more, Elizabeth.
So what are your thoughts on 15% inclusionary housing requirement?
My understanding is that it is dependent on the zones and where it is. There's different percentages according to what the cost is going to be for the developers. Like I had stated earlier, it kind of goes into finding that sweet spot that communication needs to go. If it's going to not be appealing for a developer to come into spots where we've been begging for development, I would hate for them to say, you've got to do 15%, and then they choose not to. I know the person who owns a house and that neighborhood has not appreciated in forever. Those marginalized communities where no one's investing and they're trying to say, please invest in us as well. So I'm not stuck on the 15% only because I don't believe we had the right people at the table to figure out exactly what those neighbors need.
Clayton?
I'd like to follow up on my first question a little bit. I'm interested in the entire concept of fear in connection with police work.
Yeah.
Many years ago, policemen had to fill out a report every time they took out their gun. Many years ago, police did not use the word fear as a reason or an excuse for shooting somebody. So I'm wondering about that entire concept of fear and the way in which it is legitimated by being accepted. And I'd just like you to comment on that idea.
So right now, you're absolutely right. Right now, if I were to find that an officer had violated the code of excessive force, they were too rough. One of the hardest ways that I could get any accountability for that officer's actions is if he had said, I was fearful for my life. Another one on the books right now, it's malicious, right? I don't like him because of, they never say that, right? They'll be like, I don't know the guy, I don't have a reason to not like him, I wouldn't beat him up, right? So what they do is they use this fear thing. The only reason why I hit him 32 times is because I was fearful that he was going to reach for my gun. That's the spot where we have not been able to touch it. So trying to, and a legitimate thing is fear, right? If someone's afraid of losing their life, how can a jury say, no, you shouldn't have killed him? So we're trying to approach fear from before you even get a gun in a badge. That's where that discussion comes in. Before you get a gun in a badge, how do you adjust the fear? But I'd love to talk with you offline because it's a huge discussion in all of this when we're talking about police reform and accountability. That's kind of the heart of where this whole thing is right now.
So we're out of time. It's been 20 minutes. If you want to end with a 30-second closing statement.
Yes, now more than ever, we need to make sure that we are taking hold of the Trump effect. A lot of folks don't agree with the current situation on a federal level. They're frustrated by the state budget impacts at the state level, and all eyes are on a local level of what can we do. This is our moment for any activists in the room, and I do see familiar faces, so I know you guys are all out there, to get involved. Like I said earlier, be the life jacket to so many Seattle folks who feel like they're being left behind as Seattle's moving forward. That's why I'm running. If you want to find more about my vision and mission, see votesheley.secrest.com.
Great. Thank you very much.